Ladies and gentlemen, we are fascinated by the story of Hans Niemann, and he is currently playing the last major classical chess tournament of 2023 in London, and it is known, quite fittingly, as the London Chess Classic. Hans just came off an 8 out of 9 finish in Zagreb, Croatia, where he had an average performance rating of 2,946. Hans is on fire, but in today's video, I am going to show you how he has been slowed down, a peg has been put in the wheels, if you will, a fascinating and incredible game played by his opponent, Grandmaster Andrei Volokityn from Ukraine. And before I show you this game, I'd like to thank the sponsor of today's video, BetterHelp. My friends, you come to this channel to laugh, cry, learn, or be entertained by chess in some way. But remember, not all influencers that you see on your screen are constantly happy or entertaining. I just turned 28, and there are definitely days where I experience some level of anxiety. When I was younger, I was a bit rebellious and withdrawn. I even quit chess for 3 years. And when I was younger, I went to therapy, and it made a difference. Therapy can give you a safe and comfortable environment for you to open up about your problems. But starting therapy, or even just finding the right therapist, isn't always easy. But today's sponsor, BetterHelp, does make therapy easy. They can connect you with a licensed therapist out of their network of over 30,000. Why BetterHelp? Well, the right therapist might not be in your area, or covered by your insurance, or you might dislike the face-to-face element of therapy. Well, the good news is on BetterHelp, you can actually try a phone call, video chat, or even just text messaging for your therapy. And if you don't feel like your therapist is a good match, you can switch therapists at no additional cost to you. Therapy helped me when I was younger, and I know it's not going to be the last time that I try it. Think about this. Many of you spend hours every single week practicing your chess or going to the gym. But why don't we give our mind the same level of attention? You should know that over 4 million people have already started using BetterHelp to live a healthier, happier life. And so, my friends, if you think you can benefit from therapy, consider BetterHelp. You know how this works already. Click that link in the description or go to betterhelp.com/GothamChess. Now let's get back to the video. Thanks, Sponsored Gotham. My friends, in case you can't tell, Sponsored Gotham was doing quite all right. My throat is still bothering me a little bit here. I'm a little bit under the weather, so if I sound a bit raspy, I do apologize. This was a great game. Hans has been on fire here in late 2023. He's back up to 2690, back approaching the 2700 level. And he's playing this tournament in London, which combines many players from all over the world. We got young guys. We got guys like Gukesh, for example, who are in the event trying to make a name for themselves. Shreyas Royal is a 14-year-old international master, 15-year-old international master from England. Andrei Volokityn, however, is a long-time grandmaster. I believe he's in his 30s. He might even be 40, but I think he's in his 30s, from Ukraine. He's been 2,700. Very interesting to see how Hans approaches this. Hans won a very nice game a couple of rounds ago, but against e4, he has stopped playing the Sicilian defense completely in this tournament. Hans is a fighter. I mean, that is like all the games that Hans wins are not like methodical little positional squeezes where he takes advantage of a bishop for a knight. Like when Hans beats people, he like really, really beats people. But in this tournament, Hans has played e5 every game. He's played e5 every game, and e5 is not really an invitation to party. e5 is very solid. And on top of that, every one of his opponents thus far, the first two, and now Volokityn, have played the Spanish. So nobody is playing the Italian against Hans. Maybe Hans has something interesting cooked up there with the black pieces, but everybody has played bishop b5. And bishop b5 puts black in one of 3 situations. Number one, you play the Uga stuff. You play the stuff that's the sidelines. You know, you play the Kozio. You play the Neo Steinitz with a6d. You play a sideline. Number 2 is you play the main line. You play knight f6, you play the Morphy's defense, knight f6, then you choose, you know, do you put the pawn here? Do you put the bishop there or there? Like, what do you play? Or you play the Berlin. The Berlin defense against the Ruy Lopez or the Spanish is a weapon that was popularized in the year 2000 when Kramnik, yes, that same Kramnik that recently has gone after Hikaru but claims that he's not going after Hikaru. It's very weird and it's cheating stuff. But Kramnik played knight f6. That move immediately attacks the pawn. You don't waste any time attacking the bishop. And he neutralized Garry Kasparov in the 2000 World Chess Championship match. Now, the Berlin is a weird opening for a guy like Hans, right? It's like if you like colorful clothes and stuff, but you just buy like, you know, like a totally white car or like a totally black car. Like it just somehow doesn't make sense, right? You like spicy food, but you're eating bland rice. It's weird. The reason it's weird is because it's just very like boring, very solid. For example, Castles, knight takes, and now there's two lines. Obviously, against knight f6, white can also not allow the pawn to be taken. This is called anti-Berlin. But inviting the Berlin, immediately getting the pawn taken here, black basically goes on a little circus, like a little rodeo, grabs the pawn, gets out of there, gives the pawn back, and is just in an equal position. So knight takes e4. Now, Hans's games in the tournament thus far have both gone rook e1. This is like a modern main line. White attacks the knight like this and the pawn. You get knight d6, and then white oftentimes will capture, and then black will play bishop to e7, and it's just very solid. Just very solid. Instead of rook e1, which is the modern main line, Volokhin plays d4, which is the classical main line. The idea of d4 is to get more pieces in the game as fast as possible. Black really shouldn't capture, because then rook e1 comes with a lot more venom. So against d4, what black does is gets out of there, targets the bishop on b5. Now there is a line here where nowadays people are making draws in 10 moves, which is by giving up this bishop, trapping the knight, and then there's a line here which ends d5, and then queen e4 and queen d4. Like, this is called the Berlin draw. Nowadays, when grandmasters are lazy, or they're, you know, drawing games on purpose to get more prize money or whatever, this is what they go for. But instead of that, the main line is to take the knight, take the pawn, and trade the queens. This is what we call the Berlin endgame. This is the start of, like, imagine a mountain where you go skiing, because skiing is a real sport and snowboarding is just for douchebags. I'm just kidding. If you snowboard, you're way cool. The reason I'm insulting snowboarders is because I was never cool like you. I tried skateboarding when I was a kid. I was terrible. I was unathletic. But skiing's like, you know, elegant, classy. It's like in Utah, they banned snowboarders from Park City, right? Or Deer Valley. Park City? I don't remember. Point is, if you ski, you're elegant and cool, and if you snowboard, you might be a douchebag. Like, there's a higher probability. That's all I'm saying. You could do whatever you want. You take that information. Anyway, skiing, snowboarding, not the point. The point is, I don't even know what I was saying. The point is the Berlin endgame, all right, is on the board. I forgot what I'm going to remember it halfway through the video, but there was a reason why I made fun of, you know, people who were skiing and snowboarding, but I don't remember. You will, because you just watched, and you can rewind. I can't rewind, so anyway. Berlin endgame on the board, and I remembered what I was going to say. It's a skiing mountain with many maps. Like, you have many slopes. And so this position has been played 100,000 times at top level, online, over the board. There are so many plans here. Historically, white has developed the knight. White has given a check. The black king chooses whether to hide on e8 behind this pawn or on c8. So, for example, bishop d7, and then maybe king c8 in the future, getting off that way. Now, that's one way. Now, white historically has put a rook on d1, either that one or that one. Also, a move that white likes to play is h3 to prepare an advancement of the pawns. Another move that white likes to play is bishop to f4. And it's just like choosing at what point you take what plan. Black has many plans too. Sometimes black will put bishops like that. Rook d1, the king will go there, put the bishop there. Knight might come here. h5 is a move to prevent white from playing g4 and advancing on the side of the board. So black can commit the king to two squares, the bishop. Sometimes the bishop will come out that way. You know, there are plans where the bishop goes out this way. So the Berlin is ever evolving. Ideas are sprouting up like fresh vegetables. And that's the really fascinating thing about this opening. Like, it's boring on the one hand, and it's way too complicated on the one hand, but it really is interesting stuff. Now, Volokhin plays the modern main line, which is h3. The idea of h3 is it's not committal. It's not committal. You allow black to choose his path. You don't know if you're going to put a rook on d1 yet. You don't know if you're playing bishop f4. You don't know if you're playing knight c3. Some of you watching might be confused why white can't just go do that. Black will just go here, and now you've wasted time. Now you try to develop, and black can kick you out. Not to mention, black can also, like, how do you guard? You can't. There's literally nothing. You can't guard the pawn, idiot. So, like, it looks like a totally innocuous position, but the Berlin endgame is fascinating. Fascinating. So, h3. And now Hans has to choose an approach. Now, what Hans does here is he tries to impose a little bit his playing style, which is like forcing, trying to be a little dynamic, trying to get to the point. He plays bishop e7. The idea of bishop e7 is that he doesn't want to shuffle and commit any pieces anywhere. He actually wants to go here. That's the point. He wants to trade knights. So he wants to get rid of white's knight and trade off, and so white can't really like easily take advantage of anything on this side of the board. He'll have to push his pawns. Now Volokitian plays another surprising move. Not yet. Excuse me. Not yet. I'm fast forwarding. Instead of giving the check right away or playing g4, Volokitian develops the knight. That move is not surprising, right? We've talked. The knight goes to c3 a lot. It could go to c3 now. Originally, I rushed. Now Hans plays knight h4. You can tell from their time usage, they're both still in their preparation. Knight h4. Now, white should either take or move, because if you ignore, you're just going to damage your own pawns, and it's even worse than that. Black's just a pawn up now. Not only is black a pawn up, black has a passed h-pawn, which is going to be a huge problem, because he's going to go here, like let's say a3, he's just going to go here, and then he's going to push the pawn literally the entire length of the board. So white takes on h4, black takes, black has removed some more pieces from the board, and now black would like to play bishop f5 and commit his king. You might wonder, king's in the center, that looks really dangerous. It's not 3 checks. You don't win by checking your opponent, right? King is actually completely safe, and because it's an endgame, give it a couple of moves, black is going to go rook d8, just start trading pieces, black's going to be completely fine. So the Berlin really messes with a lot of our kind of pre-existing knowledge in chess. Bishop e3, and now Hans plays h5, seemingly the last move of his preparation. That move controls white from playing g4. Because if you don't, white will probably play f4, g4, and, you know, f5 like this. Like that, this is what white wants. White wants all of this, all this good stuff. Rook d1, king g2, and this is what white wants. That's why white begins with h3 in the first place. h5 stops g4, and now, Volokitian plays a move that is very rare, and he introduces quite a new idea. It's not exactly new from the standpoint like it's never been played, but the way he plays it is very interesting. In this position, again, either of white's rooks can go to d1, but now it would make a lot more sense to bring this one. Historically, like in this position, this rook has gone to d1, but you just traded the queen side, so you gotta keep this rook behind the pawn, and the a rook, oh my goodness, my nose is itchy. The rook will go to d1 here, but Volokitian plays knight, h5 is on the board, and Volokitian plays knight e2. Now, he thought for 28 minutes, so I don't know if it was prep or inspiration, but I think, I mean, if it was prep, it was a really good bluff, because sometimes you can pretend not to know something in chess, but you actually do, which is really, but he doesn't play rook d1, plays knight e2. Now, the reason he did that is it's a endgame-ish position that's pretty closed in the sense that there's still a lot of pawns on the board, a lot of maneuvering can still occur. It's not a very confrontational position just yet. His knight had no future on c3. Now, he could have gone to e4, but then it would have walked directly into bishop f5. So he routes it this way to come forward, which is very interesting, right? The knight wasn't going to accomplish anything on those 2 squares. This move has been played about 5 times in human history, twice by Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, MVL, Frenchman. Both those games ended in draws. Now Hans plays king e8. So Hans doesn't think. Hans knows the king belongs on the e8 square. He's probably going to move his bishop and put a rook on d8 instead. Or he's going to bring his king to g7. He's going to play here and put his king on g7 where it's going to be safe. Volokitian now, again, does not put his rook on. He plays f3. That's interesting. So now, bishop f5 makes no sense because this not only defends the pawn, it also attacks the bishop, and then white could even crash through or play f4, f5. So king e8, f3. What? f3. No rook to d1. We're not bringing the rook to the open file. Why are we not doing that? Well, that's chess. Like, we have to sit here and understand Volokitian wants to play g4. He wants to implement that plan, which would counteract the natural progression and development of the black position. Hans brings the bishop back to e7. He thinks for 10 minutes. He has a lot of options. Can play bishop f5, knight d4, and then drop back, because now at least he can put a rook there, play c5. But instead of doing that, you know, I just mentioned putting the bishop there doesn't look like it makes a whole lot of sense. Maybe g6, but he doesn't want to commit his pawn just yet. I'm not sure, but he gets the bishop out of the way. And now nope. Volokitин still doesn't play rook d1. And the interesting thing is, Volokitин spent 28 minutes on this move, but then he plays every other move. Then he plays every other move instantly. He plays every other move instantly. He plays f3 fast, and he plays g4 fast. So was knight e2 preparation? Was he just bluffing? Like, he never puts the rook on d1. Every game in the Berlin ever played puts a rook on d1 in this position. So Volokitин basically invents a new way to play against the Berlin, which is really interesting. He doesn't put the rook on d1. He's waiting. Now black has a very difficult decision. Does he take? Does he ignore? Pushing is wrong because it allows white to get this avalanche. This is very bad for black. So you don't want to push. But do you take, or what do you do? Let's say you wait. Well, now I have a target, right? You gave me a target. So, okay, what if I wait with a pawn? Then white's just going to advance. Like, at some point, black is going to run out. Let's say black also waits. But now I'm bringing my knight to g3. So are you going to take or not? If you take, what's going to happen? We're taking like this. I'm going to get you in on the h file. So white is going to have way more time and way more useful moves. Knight g3, rook d1, all this stuff. So Hans, true to his playstyle, tries to solve things by force, f5. Now he has two pawns staring at the g4 pawn. He's looking to apprehend Volokitин right here. Big moment for Volokitин. Take that pawn. Take that pawn. Push or ignore. 4 decisions to be made. Pushing looks very feeble, because by taking the pressure off both pawns, black can just lock the position. Knight f4, king f7, white's not going to make any progress. Not to mention, bishop takes g5 maybe. So we can't even do that. We have to play h4 first. But you don't want to push. You don't want to push. A little bit boring. You don't want to push. So you don't want to push. Do you take? Do you take? Or do you take en passant? Not because it's forced. Well, depending on your elo, it's forced. But what do you do here? So Volokitин takes en passant. And now Hans can take with the bishop or the pawn. Very difficult decision, because if you take with the bishop, we might end up in an endgame where I just have open files. I have a 3-on-2 pawn majority, and I'm just going to expand and advance. And that looks a little bit unpleasant because black has 4, white has 3, but black's c-pawns are doubled, so it's hardly felt. Whereas here, white has a very clear majority. So very difficult decision, and Hans ultimately chooses to take with the pawn. Quickly. Hans takes quickly. He decides to take with the pawn. Now knight f4. And now I have this very powerful wall, and I'm attacking your pawn. You have to make a decision. If you don't make a decision, I'm going to take with the knight. I'm just going to grab I'm just full pawn up. Now, I've already said, if h4, feeble. It's a very feeble move. Knight g6 is going to come in. That pawn's weak. White can advance. So black takes. And now, another very interesting decision. A moment ago, if black had taken this pawn like this, white would have had to take with the h-pawn to get out of the way. But I got news for you. Even if something like g4, g6, king g2, hg, white would have taken with the h-pawn. Because you are building the pawns together versus a cluster that is together. These pawns together into those pawns together. But the second that Hans Niemann took with the pawn, everything changed, because black's pawns are no longer together. So white does not have to take to keep his pawns together. If black had a pawn on g6, which was counteracting both pawns, you would want your pawns to be together. But now, because there's nothing covering the h-file, this pawn moved to the f-file. It doesn't cover the h-file anymore. Volokitин takes with the f-pawn, and the idea is to create a passed pawn. In fact, it already exists. A passed pawn is a pawn that has no pawns hindering its progress. Pieces can block it, but it's not the same thing. This will get taken. Nothing can take this pawn if it's protected. So Volokitин creates this imbalance. He's down 40 minutes on the clock. Hans playing very fast, but a very nice positional game. And now Hans, again, a massive commitment. A massive commitment. Because at least this pawn covered the g-pawn advancing. So Hans could have played something like king f7. But then, you know, Volakitin would have played like bishop d7 or rook g6. But instead of that, instead of waiting, instead of sitting there and preparing his position, Hans tries to immediately solve his problems. Which would make sense if it would leave him in a situation where he's just got a pawn target. But Volakitin is an experienced grandmaster, good positional player, very good. And now it's time. And look, now he doesn't bring the rook here. He brings it here. The rook waited. It was patient. White has 4 pieces out. Black has 1. 4 out of Black's pieces are on the home squares. The Berlin, in and of itself, is an opening, my friends, where the Black king is on the back rank. The pawn structure is damaged. Pieces are fighting from here. But the point is, the position's closed. 3 pawns, 4 pawns. You build the wall. You prevent your king from being in danger. But Hans plays the Berlin too aggressively in this game. And Volakitin makes him pay for it. When the position ends up opening up the way it does, it's the Black king that is unable to defend himself. The Black pieces are not able to come to the battle in time because they're all on the back rank. So the plan, the style does not fit the opening. It's why I don't understand. Why does Hans even play the Berlin? I'm not playing in the London Chess Classic, so I can't speak, but he's an aggressive player. He's a dynamic player. It's just so shocking. And now Hans plays king f7. But now it's too late. The white initiative is now roaring. Bishop d4, and the rook goes to d8. How is white going to capitalize with all of this mounting pressure on his position? Well, my friends, no good game is finished without your favorite sacrifice. What am I talking about? What sacrifice? Obviously not rook takes bishop. There's no follow-up to that move. That doesn't work. And your bishop is hanging. You got to go here first, right? Well, yes. Or no. In this position, Andrei Volakitin sacrificed the rook. That was a blooper. There's this new... Chess.com has this new analysis feature that they built where it allows like you to highlight the move, and my mouse was highlighting bishop c3 still. Okay, we're not going to edit that out. That's hilarious. That's going to end up in a compilation somewhere. In this position, nobody has to know that. In this position, Andrei Volakitin sacrificed the rook. Rook takes e7. But why? Why would he do that? It's the culmination of his entire plan. What am I talking about? Why am I speaking in riddles? Well, to get his bishop out of danger now, he gives a check. But it's not about that. He didn't do this to give a check. He did this to remove the bishop from the defense of the diagonal, and now he plays g5. The pawn is blocking Black's own pieces. That move f5 by Hans was an overcommitment. Now the pawn is blocked. The rook was sacrificed to advance the pawns. Connected, passing pawns. Opposite color bishop escorts the pawns because nobody can fight back against it. And this bishop still cannot get out. And there was no way to stop this. This still would have worked because of here, bishop e7 is a fork. A brilliant positional sacrifice of a rook. Spectacular positional understanding. Bishop c5, g5. And I got news for you. Stockfish does not realize how bad this position is. Like, maybe it can defend this against a human, but at a high depth, after the move g5, as far as I'm concerned, the position is over. Like, I'm going to just double check real quick. After g5, low depth Stockfish still claims it could probably defend, but I'm not so convinced. It thinks b6, and then it thinks like bishop a6, and then I think it tries to create active counterplay before white is able to advance. But this is a nightmare position to defend as black. And I got news for you. In this position, despite a major time advantage, Hans completely does not defend it the right way. He plays rook g8, trying to stop the pawn. Volakitin obviously just advances. Now, if you play rook h8, you're wasting time, because I'm going to get my pawns there, and the closer they get, the more time is running out. So now Hans gets the bishop out. Apparently, what he should have done is gone here. Stockfish really wanted the bishop on this diagonal. I don't really understand why, but I think it wants to trade, and Stockfish makes the argument that the pawns will not defeat the lone rook. That's what it's arguing. You get all of this, you can get the check, but at some point, black will be able to defend himself against these pawns, and maybe even sacrifice the bishop for two of them. But instead of all of that, Hans plays this, h4, bishop e6, and then in this position, he plays a fancy move, which is rook g6. But Volokitian does not have to take the rook. Plays rook g1, trying to advance. Plays rook e1, targeting the bishop. Repeats once and just shuffles his bishop to cut more diagonal space. Bishop e5, the position is mounting and building the pressure. Hans plays b5, trying to just seize a little bit of space on the queen side. Black has no play. So Volokitian sneaks in and grabs a pawn for good measure. Now he's got another pawn. Hans plays bishop e4. Volokitian now zips in on this diagonal. You just can't break the barrier. He loses a pawn, but this is not the time to be active. Now all of white's pieces are swarming the black king. Rook d8 check, king f7, repeating again, kicks the bishop out of the position. Hans could have played bishop e4, but it was just a matter of time. Bishop e5, and oh my goodness, the bishop is hanging, and that is a devastating threat. Rook f8, and in this position, Hans resigned, because after king f7, white's gonna go here with a fork, here, and you're gonna win this. Rook d8 check, and the game is over. What a game from Andrei Volokitian. What a masterclass in how to dismantle an overly aggressive Berlin defense. The Berlin is a solid opening. I mean, it is designed to neutralize white in a Ruy Lopez in a long grinding endgame, but Hans just was a little too confrontational in his game. Maybe that's just his whole personality being too confrontational, but it's fascinating that playing f5 and like this with best play could hold, but a fascinating transformation of the position from Volokitian, and f5 is a fatal mistake. As far as I'm concerned, f5 was the move that sealed the deal, because after that, white got too much, and what a sacrifice. And the question is, should Hans have played rook e8? Because after rook e7, no, probably you can still go g5, but then there might be a rook e4. I don't know. But this was an incredible idea from Volokitian. And just shows you, Hans still has time. Still got time to work on the game, be a little bit, a little bit more patient, a little bit more professional. I mean, I don't know, professional is not, but you get what I'm saying. So we'll see. But a great game from Volokitian, and an uncharacteristically shaky one from Hans over the last few weeks, who has shown really, really good form. I'm going to cover the good and the bad like I do with all the best players in the world. And Hans doesn't yet have the credit of being the best player in the world, or one of the best. He's, top 40 or something. But definitely one of the most popular. So I will be covering his games. And that's all I have for you today. Yeah. Get out of here.